Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing mistakes your ex won't forget. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.datetome.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing mistakes your ex won't forget. So if you've been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will need them to look past mistakes they feel you made. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 mistakes that your ex-dumper won't forget and might not be able to look past. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is poor communication. Now, poor communication is something which sadly ends many relationships. I would suggest that communication skills are some of the most important skills you need to get through life in the best way that you can, and certainly to prolong a long-lasting relationship. If you don't have communication skills, you are going to run into trouble fairly quickly, and depending on how much patience your partner has will dictate how long this particular relationship will eventually get to before they decide to call time on it. Now you might think, well, where does poor communication come into play? Well, it comes into play almost everywhere, but one of the major examples that I could give you right now is when a relationship is not being moved forward at the pace that both people want it to be moved. Now you might argue that your ex-dumper also didn't have good communication skills in an instance like I'm suggesting, and I'm not here to say that you're wrong. You're probably likely to be correct in your assumption that your ex-dumper could also be better at communicating. The difference is that they decided to call time in your relationship, and therefore, in their mind, if communication was the major problem, they felt from your side of things it was much worse than themselves, because presumably they wanted to try and keep everything moving forward, and if they didn't feel that you were doing your part, they probably in their own mind didn't feel there was anything they could do about it. Now, I'm not giving them a pass, and like I said, in an instance like this, it's going to take 2. It takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 people with communication skills of a high enough level to take a relationship to that next level that everybody wants it to be. But if we're to focus on the point that you, the dumpee, sadly, unfortunately, didn't have good enough communication skills, your ex-dumper decided this wasn't going to work, let's just consider how this may have played out. So let's imagine that you two get together. Now, what are the first major milestones you're going to be coming across? Well, perhaps telling each other that you love one another, perhaps explaining to one another how you would like this relationship to proceed. Is this going to remain casual dating? Is there going to be some commitment? That is probably the first milestone we could suggest is necessary. Now, if your ex-dumper doesn't believe that you are communicating your feelings on exactly how you want things to go, then they might decide to pull the plug and end the relationship before it even really got started. Maybe you're in that position. Maybe you're thinking, well, we were dating casually for quite a while, and then my partner ended our relationship saying that I didn't want to take it forward and show commitment, even though I did. I did want to do that. In fact, I thought I was already doing that. I didn't think I had to explain it, and now I've been dumped. Well, there is an example of where your poor communication skills have got you into trouble. Now, perhaps you did get beyond the point of actually talking about commitment, acknowledging you are actually together as a couple. Maybe you got much further than that, and the next stage is perhaps moving in together. If your former partner wanted you to live with one another and you didn't, or maybe you did, but you didn't communicate exactly how, when, why it would take place, and in the future, how it could look. If you didn't do that, then again, sadly, you could be dumped. I see it so often where someone is dumped because their former partner didn't believe they would ever live together. Even though the dumpee is thinking, yeah, I did want to live with you. We just never really got round to discussing it. Or maybe you were asked the question and you kind of dodged it, if you're being honest. That, again, is something sadly very, very common of why relationships break down. Now, let's again move beyond that. Maybe you were living together. What could be next on the agenda? Well, of course, the pattern and the order of these things don't have to go this way. And in the past, they certainly would have gone in a different order. But just to give this potential order of how things may have gone, let's just say the next stage was you getting married. Maybe you wanted to get married, maybe you didn't. Either way, in this scenario, you did not communicate your feelings to this effectively. Your now former partner didn't believe that you felt the same as them, and therefore they decided to end that connection. Maybe they really wanted to get married. They never saw signs that you actually wanted to get married because you didn't communicate this effectively. And guess what? Sadly, once again, the relationship is over. Now, the final major milestone I'm going to talk about in today's podcast in point number 1 is having children. It's really, really important. I call this a deal breaker life goal. If one partner wants to have a child and the other partner doesn't, this relationship is not likely to last. So this is huge. This is important. But what happens if you do both have the same idea? You do both either want to have children or not want to have children. And sadly, the relationship ends because your partner doesn't actually understand your perspective, gets it confused, misunderstandings, they end that connection. Well, sadly, I see this time and time again as well. And how sad? Because this is a deal breaker life goal, but in this instance, you actually felt the same. You're on the same page. And yet the relationship ends due to your poor communication. If you have these examples in your mind of how your relationship played out, this is something that your expert dumper is going to find very difficult to forget. Now, of course, I'm not saying that you can't get your ex back from a position that you find yourself in right now if that really resonates with you. It is possible. There is always hope. However, if you want to get your ex back, they need to look past mistakes you have made. And if your mistake was poor communication, they are not going to forget that. They're going to find it hard to get past that. Is it possible? Yes. But is it likely? Well, it depends on your unique situation, but you're not doing yourself any favours by not communicating effectively. What you need to be doing right now is improving your communication skills through practice and other ideas and concepts I give in my podcasts and audio coaching service, so you can really try and be ready for if you get that opportunity again, that you take it with both hands. Because often we only get one chance of a second chance. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is physical or emotional abuse. Now, if you're hearing those words and you think, yes, this is how I treated my former partner, well, you need to be giving yourself a long, hard look about how you live your life from this point on, because this is terrible behaviour. You don't need me to be telling you this. You didn't need to be dumped to understand this, surely. But if you behaved in a way where you were giving your now former partner physical or emotional abuse, I would suggest that they shouldn't be giving you a second chance anyway. Okay, that's my personal opinion on something as serious as this. However, sometimes dumpers will give dumpees a second opportunity. Now, you need to be making sure that during the interim, you get the help and support you need to work by these situations that you got yourself into where you did behave in a way which was terrible. You need to be getting that support, whether it's from a local counsellor or whoever you may want that support from. You need to get to the bottom to why you react and behave in the way you do and make sure it never happens again. But if you did behave in this way, and even though I'm saying it is sometimes possible to get an ex back, I just think you need to recognise your expert dumper is not going to forget these things. This isn't something that's going to be brushed under the carpet. They will remember it, and I'm very glad they will too. And most of them probably won't be able to look by this. And again, as you've just heard my thoughts and feelings on this, I'm kind of glad that most people won't do it, because in this regard, it is very, very hard for a leopard to change their spots. Now, you might be listening to this and thinking, I have changed. I really have changed. Okay, that's great. If you genuinely have put in the work, if you genuinely believe that you've stopped behaving in this way, then, okay, maybe that opportunity will come your way, but you need to make sure that you take it. Now, if you want advice about how you can stop behaving in such a way, well, first of all, as I've said, get the counselling and the support you need to really dig deep to discover why you behave, why you react in the way you do, but also you need to remove triggers which may get you into that mindset. Probably the most obvious for a lot of people who sadly commit abuse are substances, such as alcohol, for instance. Not everybody who drinks can fall into this behaviour, of course. Not everybody who drinks does. But some people do. And if you're somebody who tends to react and behave in this kind of way when you drink, well, you need to stop drinking. You know, that's the type of commitment you need to show if you want to try to get an ex back where you've behaved in this terrible way. You need to get the professional support, but also you need to remove the things which trigger you into behaving in this way. And if alcohol is that type of thing, well, you need to stop drinking. But we're talking in today's podcast about mistakes that your ex won't forget. And we have to acknowledge that definitely, if we're thinking of something they're not going to forget, physical and emotional abuse is right up there towards the top of the list. They won't forget it. It's very good that they won't forget it. And it should be a warning to you that this should never, ever happen again. Get the help you need, do the work, and if you get that opportunity to reconnect with your ex, you need to make sure you behave in a completely different way to how you did previously. Because if you don't, you won't just get dumped again, but the authorities could easily and likely be involved. So please, take heed of this message. Make sure you get the support, do the work, do what you need to do now to prevent yourself from getting into a lot of trouble with the law possibly, but also dumped again in the future if your ex gives you a second chance, or if not, someone new. Because if you behave in this way with someone new, you will get dumped. Either way, whether it's your ex or this new person, and you will likely get in very serious trouble indeed. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast, about mistakes your ex won't forget. And point number 3 is cheating. Now you might feel this is a somewhat obvious thing to say, that your ex-dumper won't forget you potentially have cheated on them. They're not going to forget that. Well, yes, that is kind of obvious. They aren't going to forget that. However, what might not be so obvious is the fact that a lot of dumpers who have been cheated on and therefore they end the relationship, a lot of dumpers will get to that stage where they do reconsider and possibly take their ex back. Because a lot of you may listen and think, okay, cheating, surely that's the worst thing that can happen. They're never going to take me back. Now, I'm not saying that your ex-dumper should take you back. I'm not saying that you deserve to be taken back. But what I am saying is I've heard of many dumpers who have done just that. They've changed their mind. They've taken their dumpee back who did cheat on them. Now let's look at this a little bit clearer. Will they forget you cheated? No, of course they're not going to forget that you cheated on them. But can they look past this? Well, sometimes they can. Now, first of all, you need to, of course, show remorse. You need to, of course, apologise, explain how, where and why you got to this position where you did what you did, and then see if there is any way your ex-dumper can somewhat understand how you could have gone down that path, and more importantly, never go down that path again. Now, if your ex-dumper does start to believe that this was a one-off potentially, then the reason why you might be able to reconnect with them is because, luckily for you, the romantic emotional attraction which was lost in a sudden way due to one instance. Now, when somebody enters a relationship, they've lost romantic emotional attraction, but it can happen in different ways. Sometimes it happens slowly but surely over time. This is likely due to incompatibility in many different ways. Alternatively, it can happen very suddenly due to an action, i.e. you cheating on your partner, them finding out, and them instantly losing that attraction. But in that regard, your compatibility might actually still be quite high. And therefore, this is why you stand more of a chance of getting back together, because once the dust has settled, if they believe that you truly are sorry and it will never happen again, there is still a core level of attraction built within you, built towards you, connecting you both. And this is the foundation of how you might be able to get your ex back, because they will still see that side of you that they really, really love. Now, I'm not saying they will get to that point. I'm not saying that you deserve that second chance. And it's also important for me to say that your ex, the dumper, will not forget this. Now, this is a huge mistake, and it's a mistake your ex won't forget. And therefore, even if you do get your ex back, even if you reconnect in this way, this sadly doesn't always work out forevermore. Often dumpers who take dumpees back who cheated on them will suffer from their own mindset shift, meaning they are likely to become more anxious. Sometimes you will find people who never ever felt anxiety, who would never ever check their partner's phone. Well, they've been cheated on, they decide to take their dumpee back, they then get into a position where they feel like they don't trust their dumpee, and through anxiety start behaving in a destructive way, such as checking the dumpee's phone. Now, I can understand why someone would fall into that trap, but that's not healthy either. I'm certainly not defending the cheating, but two wrongs don't make a right. A relationship can only work if both people feel trust. And if your ex-dumper does reconnect with you and then starts behaving in a way where they don't trust you, sadly, this is not likely to last the test of time. Two wrongs don't make a right. Distrust doesn't make a relationship work. And you should only get back together if you can both forgive one another for whatever misdemeanors you have both done in the past. It's something to bear in mind that even though someone who is cheated on might take their ex back, sadly, they won't forget, and this might mean that their mindset shifts to a place of where the future is a very rocky road. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.